Hi, boys and girls. This is Grandma Sheilla. And today, here in North Dakota, it is very, very cold. Might of fact, the thermometer says 20 below zero. That's pretty cold. And that doesn't even count the wind chill factor. Well, we have a warmer day in our story. And our story is called Don't You Ever Try It. And his family had decided to go out to try to find a bee tree. They wanted some honey. Well, it was such a beautiful day that Mom and Dad said, let's declare this a holiday. And Dad said, you know, any one of you kids who finds a tree with bees in it, I'll give you $1. Well, that sounded like a wonderful thing. It was fun to go look for a bee tree and know that if they found one, their family would have a whole year's worth of honey to enjoy. So, eagerly, thinking about that $1 as well, each of them went their own direction to look for a bee tree. Well, Muriel, he knew that bees, if you found bees that were all loaded with pollen and you followed them, those bees would go right straight to their hive. So all of that family, each of them, found some bees and started to follow them. But after multiple hours, nobody had found a hive. Well, Muriel, he had walked a long ways away from everybody else, and he was getting tired. And then, ahead of him, he saw something that just had to be the place where the bees were hiding. About 3 miles from Muriel's home was the Colorado River. Now, Muriel knew that the Colorado River could be a very dangerous place. His parents had told him all about the dangers of that river, about the rocks that were right under the water, that if you were swimming you could hit into. They told him about the currents that could pull you under and pull you down the river. Well, they told them about all the dangers, he and his brothers and sisters. But the parents, they hadn't said, don't swim in it. But then he thought about it. They hadn't told him not to jump off a cliff either. Well, anyway, he stood there because those trees that he wanted to go investigate for honey were right on the other side of the river. Well, he stood there. You know, there was a bridge that crossed, I said Columbia, the Colorado River. There was a bridge that crossed that, but it was about 3 miles upstream. And by now, it was afternoon, might of fact, getting to be late afternoon, and he thought he would take me 3 miles to get to the bridge, then I'd have to cross it, then I'd have to come back 3 miles back down the other side of the Colorado River to get to those trees. And he thought about it, and he thought, there just wasn't enough time to go that far. It was too far and too short on time. Well, that should have been the end of it, right? but it wasn't for Muriel. He looked at the river and he thought, well, you know, it doesn't look too bad. And not too many months back, he had learned to swim. If you want to call it swimming, he could dog paddle real well. And he thought, you know, I can dog paddle about 100 feet. And he looked, because right in the middle of that river, there was a big island. And he thought, that can't be too far. So, without thinking about his parents' caution about it being so dangerous, he took off his shoes. He took off his socks. He stuffed his socks into his shoes. And he took the shoestrings and he reached behind him. And he took the shoestrings and tied them together. Then he took the ends of the shoestring and he ran them around his suspenders in the back. And he tied them in a knot. Then he bent down and he rolled up the legs of his pants. And he thought, now I'm ready. He waded out into that water. And at first it wasn't too bad. Then it was so deep he had to swim. And he swam. And he swam. Before he'd gotten into the water, he had seen a 2x4. Chunk of a 2x4, and he picked it up and he thought, I can float with this. So when he got to the point that he had to swim, he put that 2x4 out and he held it tightly with one hand, and it went under his arm that way. And he thought, I can hold it tight to me, and it'll be like a float. And with the other arm, I can paddle. Well, it was an all right idea, because it wasn't too long till he had reached that island. And he thought, wow, this is great. Well, then he walked across the island to see what the other part of that river was like on the other side. Well, he looked at it and he thought, I think I've made a mistake, because the current was very deep and it was just rushing down the river. And he thought, this is dangerous. I shouldn't go in there. But he thought, well, you know, it's not too very far. And then he thought, no, this is a lot further than what I just swam through. And in his mind, probably his guardian angel saying, you really should go back. The other wasn't hard for you, but this current looks bad. Remember what Mom and Dad said? But he didn't listen to that little voice. He decided, I've gone this far. I can make it with my board. It wasn't the other side of the river. There was another little island. And he thought, I can reach that. So he grabbed his board again and he waded out into that water. Well, that water was deep, and before he even had a chance to think about it, that river snatched away his board, and down the stream it went. And next, it rushed under his feet and picked him up. Now, he was being pulled by that current at an express rate. What in the world was he going to do? Well, He should have just tried to turn himself around to go back to the island he'd come from. But all he could think about was getting to that other side. Well, he fought that current, and he fought that current, and every once in a while it would pull him down under the water. And his face and his mouth would be covered with water. He would suck in that water, and he'd be coughing and choking and sputtering when he came back out of the water. He knew he had to get to that other island because the water had pulled him so far he couldn't go back to the other one. And he thought, if I miss this other little island, I'm going to be drowned. Already he was thinking about, this may be my last day on earth. Oh, God, please help me. So he started swimming as fast as he could. It was hard because the current kept spinning him around. It was really hard. More times he went under the water and came up. Oh, and then he realized something. There were lots of big rocks just under the surface where you couldn't see them. And he thought, oh, if my head cracks into one of those, I'll be a goner. But he kept trying. He kept trying to swim, and he didn't hit any of those rocks. And as difficult as that piece of the river had been, he made it just barely, just a few feet from the end of that island. He was able to get up on the bank. He just lay there. Oh, that was awful. And he was coughing and sputtering, trying to get that water out of him. When he'd caught his breath, he thought, I can't believe that I just did that. How stupid is that? Then he ran to the other side of that little island, and he looked to see what the next section of water was like. And he thought, it doesn't look any better than what I just went through. He ran back and forth. He ran across the narrow part of that island, looking at the water that he had just come out of. And he thought, I just can't go back in there. And finally, he made another decision. He thought, I know how dangerous that water is. This one doesn't look much better, but I don't know really what it's like. I better just keep going to the other side. I can't go back. I'm marooned on this island. I can't just sit here. Mom and Dad don't know where I am. The only person that knew, well, the only one that knew where Mira was God. And he had been praying earnestly. He decided, I have no choice. I have to go forward. He bravely stepped into that new piece of water. It was about the same distance that he had traveled in that really bad current. And he thought, I've just got to try it. But then he discovered something absolutely marvelous. That water was only waist deep. He didn't even have to swim. He just kept walking through that water, and the current was not nearly as bad as the other current had been. Finally, he made his way out of that dangerous Colorado River. He stood there. He was so tired, he finally ended up just laying down. And then he realized it was getting really close to dark. Now, he thought, I'm not even going to check and see if those trees have any honey in it. The bees can just have it if it's there. Well, now he had to walk 3 miles back down to the bridge. He had to go over the bridge. He had to walk another 3 miles back and 3 or 4 miles back to his house. He thought, I better get going. He untied his shoes from his suspenders, and he pulled out his wet socks. He put them on. He put on his wet shoes, and he unrolled his wet pants. Luckily, it wasn't cold. It wasn't real pleasant to walk in wet clothes, but that's what he had to do. And he started plodding on that first 3 miles over the bridge, the 3 miles back, and almost when he had reached home, do you know what he thought? I've learned 3 things today. Number 1, don't go in a river that you don't know what the current is like. Number 2, don't ever go swimming alone. Number 3, don't think that you know more than your parents do. Muriel got some wonderful instruction that day, and he never forgot those 3 things. Listen to your parents, boys and girls. They do know more than you do. They've had more experience in life than you do. And remember once again to listen to that little voice in your head. If that little voice is saying, don't do it, you better not. Thank you, boys and girls, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye now.